A long-standing family agreement had betrothed Scarlett and Van Diemen to Prince Kil since before their birth. Yet, this ancestral agreement was abruptly shattered during an elegant ball when Kelly publicly terminated their engagement. His reason: he had grown weary of Scarlett and desired to be with his mistress, Teresa, leaving Scarlett utterly devastated by the treachery. The party attendees applauded Kelly and Teresa as she announced their impending marriage. Her reaction Scarlett found incomprehensible. She couldn't fathom how everyone could support this arrogant man who had just discarded his fiancée. Though the explanation soon became clear to her. Kelly lauded Teresa as a woman of keenness and intellect. In stark contrast to Scarlett, whom he described as utterly devoid of feeling. He for her declared that finding a joyful engagement to her for the past 17 years had been the most shameful period of his existence. Expressing immense relief, he stated his joy at finally being rid of her. But Scarlett was not on toiled effortlessly and promptly reminded her. She pointed out that their parents had arranged the betrothal, and they lacked the authority to unilaterally annul it. Kelly retorted that he absolutely could dissolve the engagement. They claimed he did not own as consent, as Scarlett was apathy of them who had been tormenting Teresa, driven by envy. Teresa began to play the victim as Kelly recounted tales of Scarlett as alleged bullying on the academy grounds, a narrative Scarlett immediately dismissed as false. She argued that she was encountering Teresa for the very first time, as she attended different classes. However, Kelly, seemingly possessing minimal intelligence to begin with, appeared to have lost what little sense he had upon falling for Teresa, no believing Scarlett was attempting to disparage his new fiancée. This was because Scarlett mentioned she was in the elite class, while Teresa was in the regular one. He asserted that Teresa had confided in him about numerous instances where Scarlett had supposedly bullied her, even locking her in the restroom and shoving her down staircase, leading him to brand Scarlett a ruthless villainess. Having reached her limit with this immature man's insults, Scarlett informed Kelly that she no longer cared about any of the accusation. She was also prepared to accept the annulment of their engagement. However, she had one last request for Kelly. Before their relationship concluded permanently, the prince was disinclined to grant her even this small favor, but Teresa, assured of her triumph, urged him to listen to the pitiful woman so she would have no lingering regrets. Kelly, captivated by her apparent benevolence, began to fawn over her. Christian asked Scarlett what she desired. She advanced slowly towards them, clenching her hand into a tight fist as she addressed Kelly. Her ultimate wish, she declared, was to strike the beat across the face. Kelly, struck by her pronunciation, questioned if she had lost her sanity. However, instead of replying, Scarlett delivered a punch to Teresa's face with such exquisite form that even the legendary Muhammad Ali would have admired. Nevertheless, this singular blow was merely the culmination of an extensive history, and, for better or worse, we must delve into its entirety to truly grasp its significance. From her earliest childhood, Scarlett had a distinct fondness for physical altercation, regularly rendering some hapless individual unconscious. Her brother, Leonardo, consistently admonished her for her aggressive inclinations. Yet, Scarlett maintained she acted for the common good, while Leonardo acknowledged that Scarlett had, indeed, rescued a commoner from a spoiled noble on this occasion. He currently erased the image of her appearance. Covered in blood, he informed her that she would soon be introduced to noble society at an upcoming ceremony, and, therefore, she needed to chase her brawling and conduct herself as a proper lady, a directive that would become her most formidable test. This challenge arose when Scarlett first encountered the utterly unbearable Kelly during the very same ceremony. He immediately declared that she would serve as his personal attendant from that day forward, prompting Scarlett to summon every ounce of her self-control to suppress the overwhelming urge to punch him, knowing he was the nation's second prince, and her fiancé. which marked morally the commencement of her torment, as Kelly incessantly bullied her and subjected her to endless pranks. Her hands were tied with her family's delicate political standing. Even her father was powerless to assist her, given their dealings with the royal household. Thus, Scarlett endured years of abuse until, at 15, she enrolled in the National Academy, having achieved stellar academic results. She rapidly garnered a significant following. Regrettably, Kelly was also present and publicly announced that she would continue to serve him as his slave even within the academy. By this point, however, Scarlett had grown impervious to his harassment and childish outbursts. She maintained an impassive expression when interacting with him. A few days later, Kelly burst into her classroom in an exceptionally bad temper. He began to verbally abuse her, ordering her to buy him lunch. Scarlett into her, apologized, and assured him she would comply at once. Yet, the obnoxious prince remained unsatisfied and forcibly dragged her away to inflict punishment. He left his lackeys to guard the other girls, ensuring they would report him to the teacher. Scarlett soon discovered had Kelly's fury stemmed from his demotion to the regular class due to poor academic performance, and they sought to release his frustration. By assaulting her, he resolved to show her height and present it to his class as a trophy. Even Scarlett's considerable patents was severely tested. She warned him to desist, or she would inform her family. But Kelly retaliated by insulting her father, labeling him a mere lapdog for the royal family. Scarlett was on the verge of sending his pathetic self to oblivion. While, fortunately, the first Prince Julius happened to be nearby. He promptly intervened to halt the altercation. Kelly, powerless in his elder brother's presence, departed after receiving a stern lecture. Scarlett knew Kelly would inevitably return to torment her, but she thanked Julius for his intervention. He modestly responded that he was merely protecting his younger brother. Before engaging in casual conversation with Scarlett, Wu, recognizing his commendable character, began to hold him in high regard. She understood that Prince Julius was the primary contender for the throne, but the corrupt aristocrat, fearing his influence, supported Kelly to submit good pair. Yet, her admiration for the first prince quickly transformed into envy upon discovering that Julius had achieved flawless scores across all academic subjects, thereby ending her week as the top student. She initially believed Julius was truly exceptional and diligent, but as he approached her and casually mentioned the ease of attaining perfect marks, she became incensed. Taking it as a personal affront, she dedicated herself to surpassing him in their next encounter. However, rumors circulated that Julius had deliberately lost to make her happy, a revelation that intensified Scarlett's frustration. Consequently, she resolved to completely ignore him, but Julius persisted in bothering her, even trailing her after school. Inquiring about the status of her relationship with Kelly, Scarlett then abruptly realized that Kelly had not made any attempt to harass her. Recently, despite the public humiliation she had suffered just days prior, it dawned on her that Julius was persistently pursuing her as a tactic to deter Kelly, and she nearly began to view him in a positive light. Julius then suddenly started flirting with her, and Scarlett would have been swayed had he not referred to her as an intriguing creature. His comments startled her, but it soon became clear that Julius was being truthful, and he genuinely considered Scarlett an interesting specimen worthy of study, even maintaining detailed notes about her. It was at that moment that her animosity towards Julius began, and she harbored a desire to punch both him and Kelly someday. Returning to the present, all her pent-up fury finally finds an outlet on Terence's face, with a single strike, Scarlett sends her vein, and simultaneously incapacitates two additional individuals. Kelly, totally panicked by the scene, demands to know what on earth she is doing, and Scarlett, with an easy demianon, responds that his harsh comment had provoked her, and Terence was forced to bear the consequences. She subsequently advances towards the assembly of astonished aristocrats. Currently aware that each one of them is a dishonest scoundrel. Her anger stems from their celebration. When Kali out of the betrothal, she sent down her specialized punching gloves, which she habitually carries for a unforeseen crisis. The aristocrats, says Beaver, summon the royal guards. But Scarlet promptly renders them unconscious with her magic before systematically assaulting the nobles on Bione. The aristocrats then begin imploring anyone to shut down, even proposing to trade their enslaved individuals, despite the nation's prohibition on such practices. Scarlet recognizes that these individuals are irredeemable, worthless beings, and should bear no moral burden if she rendered them all senseless. Consequently, she activates her unique temporal magic to enhance her velocity and initiates her violent assault, using her very hand, which are universally effective. Before long, all the nobles lie prostrate on the floor. Kelly is the sole person left standing, and he has already soiled himself in fear after witnessing Scarlet's true, thriving nature. She then informs him that his moment has arrived. Unprecisely as she prepares to strike him, her brother, Leonardo, appears on the scene to intervene. Nevertheless, he arrives too late, and Scarlet sends Kelly fleeing into a wall, experiencing a sense of profound satisfaction, while Leonardo is aghast at the sight of the nobles thrown across the floor. Julius finds the situation highly entertaining. Scarlet feels a strong urge to strike him as well, but she opts not to go to such an extreme at that particular moment. Satan approaches Julius and Leonardo to acknowledge their presence, and he questions her about the cause of her aggressive display. Initially, Scarlet articulates her response in a manner reminiscent of an IA stating that the individuals had perpetrated heinous offenses and subsequently attempted to rationalize their actions, so she administered immediate retribution. However, when Julius requests precise specifics, she simply states that they have provoked her anger. Consequently, she rendered them unconscious. Leonardo suffers a minor shock upon hearing this, but Julius, conversely, bursts into laughter, remarking that he wished cameras had already been invented, as he was genuinely eager to witness Scarlet's triumph over all the aristocrats. He suggests she ought to have postponed her slugfish rampage until his arrival, but Scarlet informs him that such a request is preposterous. Concurrently, her brother begins to lose composure, contemplating the repercussion, but Julius reassures him that he will manage the situation. At this juncture, Scarlet abruptly experiences a wave of dizziness and collapses, with Julius swiftly intervening to cushion her head just before it makes contact with the floor. 3 days subsequent, Scarlet regains consciousness, perceiving a ringing sensation within her head as she gradually returns to full awareness. She then comprehends that she had overexerted the temporal abilities bestowed upon her by Cronon, the deity of time. Nevertheless, the instant her eyes flutter open, she discovers a maid positioned above her, brandishing a knife. Scarlet, with composure, inquires about the maid's identity. Yet, the maid shrieked for her to praise, and attempted to stop her. Nevertheless, she proved no match for Scarlet as swift reflexed and was immediately propelled into a wall by a punch. Leonardo rushed in upon hearing a tumultuous noise emanating from his sister's chamber, utterly appalled to witness that her immediate action, after recovering her faculties, was to strike another person. Regardless, he conveyed his profound concern for her well-being. After Scarlet had refreshed herself, Julius entered the room and appraised her had her betrothal to Kelly had been formally dissolved with the consent of both their families. Kelly had been disinherited from the royal family as legacy due to his protection of aristocrats implicated in slave trafficking, and a very noble present at the gathering had also been apprehended. Scarlet expressed satisfaction upon hearing this news and inquired of Julius whether she, through would face repercussions He informed her that she held too much significance for the royal family to be penalized, but until this incident faded from public memory, she would encounter difficulty in securing a suitor willing to wed her. Nevertheless, he also presented her with positive tidings. Julius conveyed to Scarlett that her recent actions had transformed into a renowned tale throughout the entire kingdom, with people discussing her as if she were a legendary vigilante. Grindo referred to her as the bloodstained lady. Whoa, using only her bare hands, had dispatched numerous wicked aristocrats to incarceration. Terribly becoming a heroic figure to the populace, Leo was distraught upon hearing yet another intimidating moniker for his sibling, but Julius then revealed to him that additional honors existed. Their immediate concern is handling the arrested nobility, a group that includes numerous influential individuals. While may hold official government posts, their primary hurdle is the Prime Minister. A staunch advocate for Calais faction, Julius discloses that the king, harboring suspicions of corruption within Calais faction, established an organization named CEU to investigate. Leo currently leads this investigative body, and Julius projects to summon one of their operative. This operative, the first to penetrate Calais faction and deliver vital intelligence, is none other than Sigurd. Sigurd, a subordinate of Kili, promptly offers an apology to Scarlett for his previous disrespectful conduct. Scarlett retorted that his performance warrants an Oscar. Sigurd grows increasingly unhinged with Scarlett's continued commentary, prompting Julius to grant her permission to strike him. To resolve their past issues, Scarlett accepts the proposition. However, she merely delivers a gentle tap to Sigurd's cheek. This was because he had frequently come to her aid during his tenure with Kale. Afterward, she departed, recognizing her newfound liberation. Unbound from Kale's influence, she is now at liberty to pursue her own agenda, with her initial task being the interrogation of the maid, who had attempted to assassinate her. Earlier that morning, Scarlett proceeds to the warehouse where the maid, Nanaka, is confined. However, Scarlett discovers the maid has read her at tea. Abruptly, a well-chat looks at her. Scarlett swiftly fends off the animal, then discerns that the maid is, in fact, Asia-Pacific baseball. He instructs Nanaka to refer to human form for a conversation. At which point it is revealed the maid was actually Amal, Halti's teammate. He is resolute in his intent to kill Scarlett, while the Duchess stems from the slave crest etched onto his chest. This crest compels him to obey his master's every command. She inquired if Nanaka would be willing to disclose all information regarding his master, should she be able to liberate him. He challenges her to attempt in, which Scarlett interprets as an affirmative. She promptly restrains him to the ground, then employs her abilities to ruin the temporal effects on his slave crest. In this realm, every human is born with a divine favor, though most remain unaware of which deity bestowed their blessing. Those who discover it are able to wield the powers granted by their respective goddess. Scarlett, notably, is blessed by renowned the deity of time. This divine connection is precisely why the royal family holds her in such high esteem. She then utilizes Chrono as power to revert Nanaka's body. To it start prior to his enslavement. Approaches that Nonatella, slaves her fatigued, Nanaka, unfolding his part of the bargain, informs Scarlett that Prime Minister Godwin was the one who dispatched him. Godwin's son had been among those Scarlett incapacitated at the recent party. While Godwin had commanded Nanako to assassinate him, the latter had been sent to set off a miracle. Nanaka informs Scarlett that Godwin is a cunning individual who dispatches peace to all noble households to unearth their secrets. He then blackmails them into participating in slave transaction, ensnaring them further in his schemes. This revelation is sufficient for Scarlett. She prepares to confront Godwin at his residency. Nanaka orders her to reconsider, explaining that Godwin is perpetually enshrouded by guards. However, this deterrent does not sway Scarlet. So, the former servant advises her that, though she will have a more opportune moment to confront him, when he attends a swift action scheduled for the following week. While he does not yet know the action expresses location, he assures Scarlet he can facilitate contact with the slave trader. As he is prepared to do ancient to exact vengeance upon the individual who enslaved him and many others of his kin. Scarlet readily accepts his assistance and brings him along, oblivious that Julius has overheard her entire scheme. A few days later, Scarlet and Nanaka venture into the slums, in search of the slave trader. She returns purchasing a piece of material from a child, for a single gold coin. Nanaka informs her woman, Johnson access to Julia. Lulu had accompanied them uninvited. Initially, he stated his desire to understand his people better, believing it will aid him in becoming a more effective king. However, when Scarlet presses him, he admits to having overheard her conversation, and concluded he couldn't pass up this entertaining change to witness some individuals being thoroughly beaten. At that very moment, a group of ruffians appear, and Scarlet becomes thrilled at the prospect of having someone to fight. However, Nanaka advises her to curb her aggressive impulses, asserting that he can negotiate their way out of the situation. He approaches the thugs and offers them payment in exchange for being led to a trader known as Jun, but they decline, stating they refuse to conduct business with individuals who appear well. They then recount how a child informed him that a police, a wealthy woman had purchased a mere stone from him for a single gold coin, and they resolved to capitalize on it. They also assaulted the boy, and confiscated his gold coin, intending to illustrate that the strong exploit the weak. This revelation infuriated Scarlet. She concludes that these individuals warrant a beating and proceeds to augment her strength before utilizing that power to boost her speed. She swiftly incapacitates three of the ruffians, then directs her formidable aura towards the remaining two, who suddenly grasp they are confronting the notorious, the violent noblewoman. Regardless, Scarlet fells the patch-wearing man, then turns her attention to the final remaining bandit, who had previously declared that the strong prey on the wing. She retorts that, by his own logic, he is at liberty to do as she pleases with him, prompting him to plead for mercy. He promises to return the money to the child. Scarlet informs him he can do so after retrieving a beating, but the thug instantly employs the slave trader as variables as a negotiation tactic. However, he foolishly divulges the location without further prompting. Scarlet thanks him before rendering him unconscious, then redirects her attention to Julius, a person about Scarlet. Julius questions his own inaction during her battle, wondering if he should have stepped in. Scarlet promptly declines. Subsequently, Julius opts to speak with the slave trader, Jun, privately, concerned John might identify Nanaka, or that Scarlet might incapacitate him before extracting any details. Julius successfully obtains the information. Within minutes, through a combination of bluff and theater, uncovering the upcoming slave action as venue. During their journey back, Scarlet refers to Julius as a possible trickster, and Julius retorts, had it as preferable to being a violent lunatic. Nanaka ponders if this situation aligns with the enemies to lovers, trope he has heard so much about, but then Scarlet and Julius unexpectedly find common ground, as they both solicit his ideas for infiltrating the action. Shortly after, Scarlet visits a nobleman named Zaturin, who is, in fact, the slave merchant, whose contact details John had provided. Zaturin expresses delight at the sight of a new queen, yet he still informs Scarlet that it is unbefitting for a lady to engage with a scoundrel like Jung Morelli to look at him, when she could have easily obtained his whereabouts from a noble acquaintance. Scarlet dismisses this, stating it as no longer relevant, and then inquires about Zaturin's connection to Jun. Zathurin claims he had no formal business dealing, having merely employed John to procure a potentially valuable slaves found in the impoverished areas. Scarlett seeks clarification on his statement, and he clarifies that dwarfs, elves, blissful, and various other species are classified as valuable. He then gestures towards Nanako, remarking that the best man is an exceptionally valuable specimen. As Nanaka grows uneasy upon hearing this, Scarlett questions Zathurim about how he discerned her servant as true nature as a man. And they responded that his extensive experience in this profession allows him to tell, then begins to laugi. Scarlett is nearly provoked to assault him on the spot, but Nanaka intervenes, reminding her to adhere to their strategy. After the repulsive man chases his laugitel, he inquires about the type of slave Scarlett desires. She informs him that she is aware of an impending slave auction in the capital and wishes to participate. Zathurin as the manner turns serious upon hearing this, and they explain that verification is required to attend the auction. To achieve this, she must disclose her standing to other members of the auction community and either purchase or sell a minimum of 6 slaves. Scarlett offers him a sum he desires, but Zathurin clarifies that money is not the issue, stating instead that if she hands over her best folk slave, he will escort her to the auction, presenting her as a distant relative as daughter. Scarlett is enraged by this proposition but manages to suppress her fury, offering Apollo Smela as she states that if this is the sole requirement for auction entry, she is prepared to surrender the slave to him. Shortly thereafter, Scarlett and Nanaka depart the estate, and she remains astonished that slave trading is conducted so overtly within the kingdom. She is also relieved that their strategy unfolded as intended and Zathurin acted precisely as Nanaka had foreseen. Nanaka, though, is surprised to observe that Scarlett didn't resort to physical force to resolve every issue. She then playfully pinches him for his jest. Upon their return home, Scarlett questions Nanaka about his certainty regarding this plan, as while she can later remove his slave crest, she won't be able to safeguard him on his slave. Nanaka responds by saying it sounded as if he was about to be put up for action, and they wouldn't permit anyone to harm his merchandise prior to the evening. He further states that he is undertaking this to make amends for his attempt on her life, then abruptly begins to yawn. Scarlett comprehends that best folk are typically active at night and rest during daylight hours. In the very next instant, Nanaka shifts into his animal form and drifts off to sleep in Scarlett as embrace. She carries him back to the inn, where Prince Julius awaits their returns. Scarlett informs him of the successful negotiations, and he is astonished to learn that she managed the situation without resorting to violence. Scarlett is already irritated by this remark, and Julius then comments that he should have accompanied her to witness such a rare instance of her resolving matters peacefully. But adds that a country as Prince cannot openly participate in slave acquisition. Scarlett decides not to engage with him. Thus, immediately after settling Nanaka into bed, she opts to step outside for some fresh air. Julius claims he had the identical target, and he joins her, remaining constantly by her side. Scarlett finds this annoying. Yet Julius persists in following, asserting he has arranged on this particular strain. Just then, an apple pie vendor calls out to Scarlett, announcing a special offer for Kutira, promising a complimentary apple with the purchase of an apple pie. Julia, seizing the opportunity, purchases 2 pieces. Subsequently, a jewelry vendor attempts to sell her inexpensive trinkets, which Julius also acquires, but only after some negotiation. He even makes a purchase from a dubious fortune teller. Scarlett then inquires about his actual business on this train. Julius confesses he fabricated the excuse, and then calls Scarlett cute for falling for such an apparent falsehood. She becomes extremely vexed with him, and punches Aniar be warm unable to strike the friends directly. Julius merely chuckles in response, and then offers her an apple pie, which brings Scarlett immense joy. Julius subsequently apologizes for his teasing, but she responds that a single apple pie isn't sufficient to earn her forgiveness. However, the addition of a second pie proves effective, and Scarlett promptly forgives him. Afterward, she observes that Julius possesses a thorough knowledge of the city as layout. Excellent, he responds, confessing that he often played through one from his lessons to wander through the city streets. He then questions her impression of the marketplace, to which Scarlett replies that in the past, when Tilly dispatched her to purchase his bread, she never had ample opportunity to observe her surroundings. However, upon saying it now, the market strikes her as a vibrant and pleasant location. Julius expresses his delight that she finds it appealing, mentioning that each time he visited, he wished for her to experience this very spot. Scarlett pondered if his accompaniment was solely motivated by a desire to give her a tour. Musing that if he had simply communicated his intentions, she wouldn't have felt quite so annoyed. Abruptly, Julius launches into a soliloquy, declaring his profound dislike for idleness. From his early the grotesque and unconventional truly captured his attention. He was perpetually encircled by dim-witted aristocrats, eager to curry his favor, compelling him to maintain a facade in their presence. Nevertheless, his gaze then fell upon Scarlett, who displayed not the slightest interest in him. Furthermore, he witnessed his younger brother harassing her, prompting him to approach Harry. He informed Harry that he could report the matter to his father, should he be intimidating her. Yet, Scarlett merely offered him an unsettling smile, remarking that he had just delivered a rather amusing jest. That instant, she commanded his complete focus, and he has never chosen to find her captivating. He reiterates that while he considers most aspects of the world tedious, he detests feeling bored, which is why he endeavors to surround himself with intriguing elements. And at this very moment, no one holds more fascination for him than Scarlett. With that declaration, he abruptly leans Ada and plants a kiss on her cheek. Scarlett is left utterly speechless. Julius clarifies that, while this is the conventional romantic affection, he is certain of his fondness for her, and she holds a very special place in his heart. Later that evening, as Scarlett sits by herself in her chamber, she remains incredulous about the recent event. She collapses onto her bed, pondering whether the kiss was merely another one of the prince's exploits to vex her. The following day, Scarlett seeks out Zack once more, informing him that she will transfer Nanaka into his custody, provided he upholds his end of the bargain. He consents, but first requests Scarlett to provide evidence confirming that the slave is indeed a member of the Bestfall. She questions whether he lacks faith in her, to which he responded that it is simply his standard procedure to verify the merchandise. Prior to accepting terms, Scarlett commands Nanaka to undergo a transformation, and he instantly shifts into what appears to be a feline or canine creature, or some similar animal. Zatar expresses immense satisfaction at this sight, and at that precise moment, a large, intimidating man, whose lower jaw protrudes with visible fangs, strides into the room. He fixes his gaze on Scarlett and inquires if she is the slave they are acquiring today. Zack informs his slave, Donovan, that Scarlett is their queen, and the best folk accompanying her is the actual slave. Nanaka is visibly displeased by his presence, and Scarlett also discerns that Donovan is a hybrid of human and magical beast, identifying him as a lycanthrope. Zack offers an apology for his slave as impolite conduct, and instructs him to escort the beast away. Donovan becomes visibly animated upon saying it, and comments that beastmen are renowned for their rapid regenerative ability. He then fastens a metal collar around Nanaka's neck and begins to drag him off. However, Nanaka resists, provoking Donovan as Onion would then brandishes his barbed whip through the air, preparing to strike. But then, without warning, Scarlet seizes the whip with her bare hands. She informs Zai that his left is, in fact, quite well behaved, and if he lacks the resolve to discipline him, she is perfectly capable of doing so herself. Donovan merely scoffs at her, and Evan Zach regards Scarlet with disdain, warning her not to antagonize his life, as he is a former arrant adventurer. He asserts that she would need the strength of Agni Chaptayu to subdue him. Scarlet then questions the relevance of this information. Zach becomes perplexed, explaining that he was merely concerned for her well-being. However, Donovan then proclaims that it is already beyond that point. He refuses to allow a woman to trample upon his prey and resolves to impart a lesson to her. He begins to tuck the whip away from her grasp, but finds himself unable to dislodge it from Scarlet as unyielding hold. He exerts even greater effort, and Zach instructs him to catch his destiny, as there is no conceivable way a young woman could prevail against a man in a significantly heavyweight division. Donovan retorts that he is, in fact, genuinely exerting his utmost. Scarlet then inquires of Zach whether Donovan will also be put up for action. The response that he intends to retain Donovan as his personal protector and an instructor for his other slaves, which profess to be favorable news for Scarlet, as she won't have to be overly concerned about his market value diminishing should he sustain some injuries. Following this, Scarlet abruptly hurls Donovan into the air, before delivering a powerful punch that sends him soaring into the stratosphere. Zatar as subordinates are utterly astounded by this display, but Scarlet pays him no mind. She then turns her attention to Nanako, removing his collar to discover he is bleeding. She employs her healing magic to tend to his injuries, and embraces him, assuring him that she will return for him shortly. In the interim, he should endeavor to tolerate the hardships he encounters her. Scarlet then addresses the noble concerning the shattered window, and he informs her that she is not obligated to cover the cost of the repair. He even expresses gratitude for her disciplining Donovan, as he consistently struggles to do so himself. Upon Scarlet is returned to her inner, she discovers a recognizable chariot parked outside the entrance. Her brother stacks up, clearly incensed with her. He instructs her to recount the entire narrative on the arrive at the capital, and as Scarlet spots Julius within the chariot, she mentally beratas him for being an ineffectual prince, incapable of even preventing her brother from uncovering their activities. Upon their arrival in the capital, Leo begins to consume strong spirits at the tea table, questioning both Julius and Scarlet about their apparent lack of common sense. He demands to know how they could so carelessly jeopardize their lives, but Julius responds that since they successfully located this live action, the risks were justified. Leo then composes himself before revealing that he, too, had conducted some investigations, discovering Prime Minister Godwin as direct involvement in orchestrating the action. Scarlet informs him of its imminent occurrence, just 2 days away. This news sends Leo into a frenzy of mission planning, while Scarlet, in the interim, finds herself observing Julius intently. Julius, with a smile, offers her apple pie, reminiscent of their previous shared trial, only for her to inexplicably react with irritation. Their exchange is then cut short by Leo, who declares he has devised a strategy, beginning with his desire for Scarlet to return home. She adamantly refuses, claiming it as the own thing she cannot comply with it. Leo speculates that her primary motivation is to physically assault Godwin. However, she counters that her reasons run deeper, explaining that from a young age, she witnessed virtuous individuals enduring hardship while wicked aristocrats flourish. She firmly believes that avaricious and malevolent individuals cannot be held accountable through conventional methods, necessitating her unique intervention. She abruptly resists, declaring that self-serving and covetous nobles are the most gratifying target for her visitor. Liu and Julius exhibit their customary reactions to her aggressive inclinations. Scarlet then asserted that commoners are incapable of defeating nobles. But, being the daughter of a prominent duke, she will be exempt from repercussions. Julius contours, much to Liu as chagrin. Liu will worry Scarlet's aggressive disposition will tarnish their family standing. Nevertheless, a more significant concern looms. The potential presence of individuals from the vanquished empire at the action. Both Scarlet and Julius grow visibly anxious upon hearing this. Given that the vanquished empire has maintained a hostile relationship with their Palestine kingdom for 3 centuries, they are notoriously merciless, acknowledging power as the sole determinant of status, and are governed by formidable dragon-mounted warriors. Despite the recent peace negotiations between the two nations, Leo has retrieved very vivid intelligence indicating that the vanquished Air Force has recently established communication with Godwin. By a strange twist of fate, Godwin is simultaneously engaged in a meeting with several officials from the retaliatory aerial forces. He expresses intense anger towards Scarlet for disrupting Kelly's gathering and sabotaging their schemes. Then he instructs his soldiers to eliminate her. Harriet hired warrior enthusiastically accepts the assignment and departs on his dragon. However, Godwin is unimpressed by the soldier's arrogant demeanor. At that moment, a young woman advises him to disregard the dragon readers and observe her possession. She aims a firearm at Godwin, but as such weapons are yet to be conceived in this realm, he remains oblivious to its nature. The girl declares it a divine offering from goddess Palmyra, prompting Godwin to produce his own pendant, asserting he already possesses a gift from her. He dismisses the peculiar cylindrical object as harmless, but when the girl discharges the pistol, shattering a flower vase, he is utterly stunned. The girl is revealed to be Tarin, Kelly's mistress. She instructs Godwin to employ this formidable weapon, capable of vanquishing Eva, the most terrifying adversary, to secure victory in his future conflicts. Before long, the day of the action dawns, and Zach, visibly anxious, greets Scarlet at the action house. He presents her with a muzzle, which is unlikely to effectively conceal her identity, and Scarlet expresses her gratitude, extending her best wishes for the day's action. Yet, she secretly smirks, our 30th particular event will be his final one. For him and all the contemptible nobles participating, Zatan escorts Scarlet to the main hall, where she continues to refine her tactical approach. Upon securing the action expresses location, Julius promptly dispatched agents from his clandestine organization to infiltrate the venue disguised as domestic staff. However, he was aware that the world, albeit disarmed within the action hall, and even the use of magic, would prove insufficient to apprehend Godwin. Consequently, he designated Scarlet as their primary combat operative. The youngest her Memphis used to on an assault continental church in the action hand. Bearing this in mind, and at the same time, Leonardo and other knights are positioned outside, poised to act in the moment Julius issues the command. Leo feels assured by their preparations. Yet he fervently hopes Scarlet will avoid her foe to refrain from gratuitous violence. Agnot forms in his stomach, knowing her inability to restrain her aggressive impulses, and he can only wish for their mission's eventual success. Meanwhile, Scarlet overhears the aristocrats conversing about the specific types of enslaved individuals they hope to acquire from the action. While their preferences vary, they collectively conjure that the principal draw for this evening's action is the shape-shifting baseball. Just then, the lights extinguish, and Scarlet inadvertently collides with Aman. He offers an apology and departure, leaving her with a sense of familiarity regarding his voyage. However, she has little time to ponder this. But as the announcer then steps onto the stage, formally commencing the action, representing a bad woman with a single win. The nobles instantly begin their bidders. Scarlet observes from the balcony, struggling to contain her fury. Suddenly, Julius appears. She questions his presence, reminding him that he is meant to be directing the mission. And her replies that he came to ensure her well-being. Scarlet begins to walk off, but Julius trails after her, inquiring if she has located Godwin. She responds that she has tested him, but possesses a nation of his possible whereabouts. Julius presses her to act swiftly, warning that the royal knights are positioned outside the gate and could potentially seize her objective. Should she not hasten, Scarlet promptly proposes a bargain, requesting that he postpone summoning the royal knights in exchange for a spectacle of a legitimate, as she intends to thoroughly beat Godwin in his presence. Julius is instantly persuaded by her proposition, as this very prospect was his motivation for joining the undercover operation. Nevertheless, merely witnessing the Prime Minister as thrashing is insufficient for him, and he then asks Scarlet what she will offer him in exchange for delaying the order to the knights she pauses to consider. Scarlet pledges her allegiance to the monarchy and realm for her entire life, but Julius promptly dismisses her offer. He informs Scarlet that her devotion is not required for the crown, then tenderly chubs her face. He requests her personal fealty instead. Scarlet retorts that it will ultimately amount to the same, given his future as emperor. Julius, however, declares his impatience. She wavers, but the prince clarifies that her desires won't be met. Unless she pledges her allegiance to him at onset, Scarlet concedes and declares her devotion. Julius expresses his delight upon hearing this. Scarlet presumes Godwin is observing from the uppermost balcony. Julius urges him to hasten to that spot. Given that, Scarlet responds that she is even more eager than him to confront and defeat the corrupt Prime Minister. Concurrently, within the prison, guards escort an elven woman away, leaving her daughter behind. The child attempts to pursue her mother, but Nanaka restrains her, explaining its futility. The young girl begins to weep, while the other captives implore deities and holy figures for salvation. Yet Nanaka assures them all of their impending safety. Meanwhile, Scarlet renders the guards unconscious using her magic, prompting Julius to commend her spell mastery. She then starts to grumble. She reminds him of his victory over her in the academy as magic practical examinations, and Julius secretly enjoys witnessing her envy. At that moment, he encounters a group of ruffians, and Scarlet instantly identifies them as Godwin as personal security detail. She resolves to dispatch them as a preliminary skirmish before the main event, removing her gloves to don her diamond-encrusted knuckle dusters. She does the event employ Chrono as blessing to enhance her speed, yet she effortlessly overpowers all the ruffians. Before smashing through the door of the chamber where Godwin is observing the spectacle with his inner circle. While Evarion is still trying to comprehend the unfolding events, Scarlet strides confidently into the room, discards her mask, and declares to Godwin that her fists have been eager to connect with his fate. Godwin is stunned by her appearance, but his son is incensed. As he harbors a personal vendetta against Scarlet, he unleashes a lightning spam to strike her, but Julius employs the royal ring to nullify the attack. Godwin instantly panics upon recognizing the royal ring, an artifact capable of negating any spell cast by citizens of the Empire. As only the Emperor and Julius are permitted to possess it, Julius immediately begins to assert his authority, causing the corrupt noble to soil their trousers, realizing their impending doom. Nevertheless, they persuade each other that the fire-hired individual before them is an impostor. Godwin resolves to swiftly eliminate both him and Scarlet, ordering Eunuch's life to be brought forth for the task. Scarlet recognizes the first baseman as Donovan, who was merely to use the same form. Godwin orders Donovan to eliminate both Scarlet and Julius, But at that precious moment, as EG appears and slashes Godwin's hand, Scarlet then comprehends that the individual she had encountered earlier was indeed Sig, who had been feigning loyalty to Kei to infiltrate the action. Godwin is now utterly exasperated. He then commands everyone to assault the trespasser. Sigurd, Manuel, takes command elsewhere, instructing Scarlet and Julius to remain behind him. However, Scarlet seizes his collar and yanks him backward, informing him that the nobles present are her designated target, and he is forbidden from interfering with them. Sigurd feigns this acting as Scarlet's pacifist, then who is only authorized to engage Donovan. While she will deal with the remaining lowlyfest. He promptly agrees to her command, allowing Scarlet to revel in the moment. She flings the nobles about, generating a localized whirlwind. No one dares to approach her, intimidated by her menacing grin. Yet Scarlet confronts each of them individually, even throwing a view of the balcony during her violent outburst. Shortly thereafter, Leo hurries inside to investigate the commotion, having not retrieved the expected signal from the prince, and is appalled by the gory spectacle. Scarlet stands triumphantly amidst a peal of vanquished nobles, and Leo believes she has at last the transformed into a mass murderer. Scarlet informs him that she restrained herself, ensuring no one actually perished. However, at that very moment, she observes Sigurd struggling in his fight against Donovan. The remaining ghosts are fleeing in disarray, and Leo speculates that some might escape if things continue this way. Julius concurs, resolving that they should deploy the Knights. But Scarlet reminds him that she has not yet thoroughly beaten Godwin. Despite their current situation, Julius instructs Leo to dispatch the Knights in pursuit of Godwin. Scarlet protests that this contradicts his promise, but he reassures her that only she will have the privilege of rendering the Prime Minister unconscious. Leo turns around upon hearing this, demanding to know what is transpiring. Julius clarifies that he has made a solemn pledge to Scarlet, and thus must uphold his commitment to her. Leo is utterly astounded by this revelation, as he mistakenly believes Julia and Scarlet have exchanged marital vows. He becomes emotional, thinking his sister has at last discovered the man with whom she wishes to spend her life. However, Scarlet fails to grasp the reason for his excessive dramatics. Julius perceives that both individuals are somewhat oblivious to the nuances of the situation, but he opts to disregard their reactions, and transmits a signal to the knight stationed outside. Soon, Leo also recovers from his theatrical outburst and employs his unique ability known as clairvoyance. He surveys the entire mansion. He locates Godwin and his son making their way towards the rooftop, and immediately afterward, they observe a dragon hovering above the rooftop. The trio then rushes towards the roof, and Julius comments that his hypothesis that Godwin was collaborating with the dragon readers of the divided empire has proven correct. He states that he must act quickly, or Godwin will flee. Regrettably, he is currently in the basement, with 5 floors separating them from their destination. Fortunately, Scarlet possesses a method to surmount this obstacle. She then slips off her footwear, instructing Leo to liberate Nanakam and all other enslaved individuals, before activating her acceleration ability. She traverses an entire staircase in a single bunches of wall, shatters a window, and propels herself directly onto the rooftop. This immense exertion places a significant strain on her body, but her focus is entirely on the dragon and Godwin, whom she has no intention of allowing to escape. Meanwhile, Godwin and his son confront the dragon raider. They hurl insults, demanding the common soldier dismount his dragon and meet them on equal terms. The dragon raider, incensed, retorts by calling them mere mortal and commands his dragon to engage them. The dragon responds by swinging its massive tail, aiming to swat that woman away. At that precious moment, Scarlet descends from the sky like a meteor, intercepting and blocking the dragon's tail. She informs Ed's reader that she cannot permit him to harm her punching bagger, having already pinned Godwin as sound beneath her foot. She casually declares the raider is next. However, the dragon raider unexpectedly dismounted, expressing his astonishment. He admitted he never imagined Ion could hold his dragon as tail. With just one hand, he kneels before her, casting acid his hood. He professes his love and proposes marriage, much to the shock of all present. Scarlet rejects his offer and strikes him away. The dragon attempts to avenge his master by attacking Scarlet, but she seizes it smooth and forces it to the ground. During this interlude, the dragon raider recovers, witnessing Scarlet defeat both him and his dragon only intensifies his fascination with her. He reiterates his marriage proposal, but she punches him in the stomach, leaving him brutal. The red-haired man, he continues to extol her beauty, strength, and grace. Scarlet kicks him away, believing this action will subdue him. Nevertheless, he resists, barely standing, yet still insists Scarlet become his wife. He explained, Jay has never encountered a woman as strong as her. Scarlet tells him to chase his foolish idea, revealing she knows he is a elfine. He is the first prince of the Vanquish Empire, dispatching her to eliminate the incompetent Godwin. Godwin panics upon hearing this revelation. Alfheim then corroborates Scarlet as assertion, proclaiming his mission to kill Godwin and his followers as such traitors. They represent the gravest threat to the peace of both nations. Al hurls his spear at Godwin, intending a swift execution. But Scarlet shatters the spear with a kick, ordering him to retreat. The prince immediately closes the distance and seizes her leg. Scarlet observes that he was merely faking weakness earlier, as his physique appears perfectly robust. She questions his confidence in his resilience. Al affirms that he possesses a divine blessing that renders his body as hard as steel, making him impervious to physical assault. He informs Scarlet that her attacks will be ineffective and she should allow him to dispatch Godwin. She refuses, asserting she has a motivation. She then abruptly grabs his head. Al lowers his guard, mistakenly believing she is about to kiss him. Instead, Scarlet shoves his head down and strikes him with her full might, delivering numerous blows to his face. Al feigns being perfectly fine, but upon standing, he experiences dizziness, having sustained a contusion from Scarlet's kicks. He loses his footing but not his determination, once again imploring Scarlet to accompany him, as this kingdom of Wacklingh is unworthy of him. However, she has had enough of his incessant chatter. She simply grabs his collar and activates her power to teleport him back to his kingdom. With that accomplished, Scarlet finally directs her attention to Godwin, who is visibly terrified. He apologizes for attempting to kill her and for using terror to disrupt her engagement with Ellie. This second statement is new information for Scarlet, and she interrogates the minister about his role in Taran's proximity to Kelly. She warns that if he assisted in her public humiliation that day, he would face severe consequences. Godwin stammered, confessing he merely followed Taran as him. Scarlet's curiosity is now piqued. Godwin perceives an opportunity for escaping. He promises information in exchange for his freedom and begins. He reveals that Taran is no ordinary girl, but was summoned from another world by the goddess herself. Scarlet is skeptical of his veracity. Nevertheless, this novel information is sufficient to momentarily halt her progress. Unfortunately for Godwin, Scarlet concludes that fear has rendered him senile, and he is merely fabricating stories to protect himself. She finds it impossible to believe that Taran is a girl from another world, summoned by a goddess, so she resolves to administer the punishment Godwin so richly deserves. Godwin still attempts to negotiate with her, offering her anything she desires. Scarlet ponders for a moment, then requests a human punching bag. She describes it as having shifty eyes, a pointed nose, and well-padded attire. Godwin agrees. But then he abruptly realizes he is describing him. Scarlett had anticipated this reaction. She employs Chrono as power to make them around her flow 100 times slower than normal. While she remains the sole individual capable of moving normally, she punches Godwin on behalf of the couple he exploited, and thus he abducted to sell into slavery, for winning Nanako as slave, and for attempting to murder her. And finally, she punches him simply because she desires to beat him thoroughly, just as Scarlett delivers the final blow. Her time magic dissipates, and Godwin experiences the cumulative, delayed impact of all the punches at once. She carelessly blows as Godwin is flying, but then suddenly collapses to her knees, having overused Chrono as power. Scarlett's hair began to darken from the knees, and her hands also started to bleed, causing her distress. Fearing her brother as disapproval, she falters, but Julius appears precisely at that moment to support her. Employing his abilities, he mends her wounds, nothing that I would find it incredible to think. A mere human child the battling in this place. Had he not known her personally. Before long, Leo and their companions also reached the scene. They immediately inquired about Scarlett's well-being, and also expressed curiosity regarding Godwin as whereabouts. She informed them that he had just passed through the wall. Regrettably, Scarlett had measured the former Prime Minister as resiliency as he remained on his feet. Leaping from the wall, I produced the pistol Tran had provided, aiming to shoot Scarlett, but Julius swiftly moved to intercept, positioning himself before her to absorb the projectile with his own body. This sight horrified everyone present, yet Godwin felt a sense of satisfaction, believing he had at last eliminated one hindrance from his journey. Scarlett, incensed by his actions, instantly charged at him, cracking him to the ground with a powerful blow. Godwin retorted that her strikes would be ineffective, as he possessed a protective charm from Goddess Palmia, rendering him immune to all harm. However, the fool made the critical error of revealing this to Scarlett, who promptly snatched it from him before breaking his nose. She then declared to Godwin that he should not be pardoned for the transgression of murdering Julius, and that he ought to seek his forgiveness in the realm beyond. With this word, she struck the elderly wine with her utmost might, sending him soaring through the air. She proclaimed that she had now avenged Julius and implored him to watch over them from the heavens. Julius, with a toga, informed her that he was not deceased, as Leo's restorative magic had preserved his life. He then questioned Scarlett whether she was disheartened by his continued existence. She responded that she was relieved to find him well. Shortly thereafter, all the nobles present were apprehended, and Godwin, remarkably, remained alive even after enduring Scarlett's full force punch. Meanwhile, Scarlett was recuperating within her carriage, content with having thoroughly defeated her adversary. Concurrently, within the vindictive empire, Prince Alphonse himself trapped in a tree, just as his companion appeared to extricate him. The friend then kicked the tree, causing Al to tumble to the ground, and subsequently helped him as they proceeded towards his dragon. Al lamented that he might have sustained fractures throughout his entire body, but his friend dismissed his remark as unfunny, reminding him that he possessed the most resilient physique on the entire planet. The auburn-haired prince disclosed that he had been forcefully transported her from a distant land, and must have expended all his good fortune to remain alive. Nevertheless, they soon reached the dragon, and flew homeward, and Rota, the blondie, inquired if all had managed to enjoy the toy he had been eager to play with. All reflected on Scarlett, acknowledging that his time spent with her had been considerably more enjoyable than he had anticipated, and expressed a desire to reunite with her shortly. Meanwhile, back in the kingdom, reports of Scarlett's intervention in the slave action circulated rapidly, leading everyone to hail her as their kingdom's savior. Journalists subsequently descended upon the Royal Academy, seeking interviews with her friend regarding her past image and animal companion. While the girl speculated whether Scarlet would possess a charming, fluffy felon or a sophisticated canine, her most recent pet turned out to be the dragon named Rex, which all had left in her care. As Scarlet trained the dragon, Tanaka observed her from a distance, consumed by envy. At that very moment, her butler appeared and informed her that he had furnished all the local merchants with the product she had contrived. He expressed uncertainty about its commercial success, due to its rather distinctive nature. Scarlet, however, was convinced that Julius, at the very least, would purchase a significant quantity. The butler then hired Tanaka captive to pet reviews of her new companion, perpendicular to invading the Union like Nanaka joyfully shifted into a puppy form and bounded towards her, but the maids intervened to let him away, as they required assistance in preparing for the imminent arrival of Gaston. Conversely, Taren made a visit to the prison, but was halted by the guard. She employed her magical abilities to manipulate their mind, causing them to permit her entry. She began to contemplate her desire for the most charming storybook conclusion to her narrative. Her aspiration was to fall in love with a prince and, alongside him, conquer various obstacles to attain her blissful resolution. Every action she undertook was in pursuit of this joyful outcome, and even her current visit to Godwin served this purpose. He expressed delight at her presence and pleaded for his release, promising to exert all his influence to serve Goddess Pomona. Teren responded by stating her appreciation for him for having suppressed other regional fights, thoroughly establishing Pominis as the nation's dominant religion. Godwin asserted that he could accomplish even greater feats if liberated. However, Taren declared she had a present for him from Goddess Pomona, and subsequently utilized her abilities to brainwash him as well. Since placed a vial of poison on the ground, Godwin, now entirely subjugated to her whim, consumed the poison, and Tarin departed. Expressing gratitude for his part in her narrative, but stating she no longer required his services. The tidings of Godwin is the most soon reached Julian and his companion. Tog has struggled to accept that such a tenacious individual will take his own life. Leo, though, found the circumstances suspicious, as they had uncovered no information regarding Terrar, despite Scarlet's accounts identifying her as a significant accomplice. At that moment, Nanaka arrived, carrying some old documents that Leo had asked for, as they began to examine the villas. Julius grew intrigued by the girl named Tarian, who possessed the ability to manipulate even the Prime Minister. He unexpectedly discovered a note concerning the religion of Pomanism, and Nanaka turned upon hearing this. Julius clarified to him that various fights existed within the kingdom, with Pomanism being among the prominent ones. Leo provided additional information, stating that it had only recently gained widespread acceptance, and had even been designated as the kingdom's official deity. Its adherents venerated Pomina, the goddess associated with beauty and affection. This group is headed by an arrogant, overtly avaricious merchant. Nanaka comprehends its connection to Godwin. Godwin, it seems, was prone to striking agreement with a very dishonest individual he came across. Sigurd then introduces the subject of the kingdom as other significant faith, which has been present since its very establishment. This waito, known as Dionysi, represents Diana, a young woman gifted with the ability to perform exorcism. Leo mentions that, despite not being the official state religion, Dionysium enjoys widespread belief among the populace, and ordinary citizens would confirm this. A majority would assert that Dionysius merits the designation, which prompts Sigurd to recall the impending official pilgrimage festival dedicated to Dionysium. The festival is approaching rapidly, and Julius delegates its management to Leo, as he wishes to avoid involvement. Jane abruptly shifts the conversation to Scarlet, inquiring of Leo about her well-being. Leo responds to and she is thriving. And only yesterday, she ventured out to procure sustenance for her dragon. Julius chuckles at this, remarking that she is indeed an extraordinary and singular woman. He starts contemplating whole life with Scarlett would never be dull and ponders whether he should genuinely propose a marriage to her. Leo radiates happiness, instructing Julius to cast his destiny, as he has already committed to him with vows. Nanaka and Sigurd are taken aback by this revelation, and Leo informs them that Julian and Scarlett have pledged their lives to one another. Though this remains a highly confidential matter for now, he continues to boast about his sister's good fortune. Julius, Manuel, hopes Leo will eventually discover the truth on his own. In the interim, he resolves to visit his beloved. Several days later, Scarlett has fully domesticated the dragon and now rides it with complete mastery. Her companions from the academy come to her residence, and just as they reach the entrance, they observe the dragon soaring in their direction. They fail to notice Scarlett atop it and do not even pause for the butler to clarify that the dragon possesses no danger. They launch an immediate assault on it, and Scarlett, despite being struck later, somehow emerges unscathed. While having champ, she discovers that her friends had mistaken the dragon for an adversary. They proudly inform her that they naturally assumed as much, given that soldiers from the rival kingdom raid dragons, and they intended to neutralize on upon second. Scarlett is secretly delighted that they remain unchanged, as she has tested him in a considerable period. The young woman begins squabbling over Warhead authority within the girls' dormitory and Scarlett is absent. Following this, they urge Scarlett to regain her health quickly and come back to the academy, as graduation is rapidly approaching, and they are unwilling to graduate without her. The young woman with purple hair expresses her desire to graduate promptly and marry a suitable man. Scarlett has been informed that this young woman already has numerous admirers, but she responded that none of them are truly earnest. She makes a man prepared to jeopardize his life for her, and while Scarlett is pleased to learn of her aspirations, it brings to mind how Julius endangered his own life to rescue her. She remains uncertain about her feelings regarding this, but then her friends inquire if she has any matrimonial intentions. Scarlett likes a response to that query, but she is spared from having to answer when Nanaka enters her chamber. She informs him that she really cooked and will aging like it. Your turn Nanaka lalu. Their visit is not further question. He has brought a visitor, and that visitor professes to be none other than Julius. The young ones are astonished by his presence, and as he extends his greeting, they raise to their feet and nervously return his salutation. Julius inquires if he is causing an inconvenience, and while Scarlett states that he is intruding upon her tea gathering with her companion. However, the other young women are exceedingly pleased to forgo their tea session for the prince's presence. He then asks if I might borrow Scarlett for him. Marcel that the profess as your thoughts already, you did not the wearers us. Approaches her and takes her hand, explaining that he wishes to converse about something in private. The other girls begin to gush upon witnessing this interaction, and they instruct Julius to keep her for as long as he desires. Scarlett experiences a sense of betrayal akin to Caesar's when Brutus assassinated him. With that, Julius escorts Scarlett outside and asks if she is aware of Godwin's death. While he was in church rather, she confirms this, and Julius then adds that he looked into Tran based on her information. But Cal had no knowledge of her. They possess no further clues regarding her. Thus the inquiry has been entirely suspended. Scarlett finally grasped the reason for his desire to speak in private, as such a discussion would have been impossible in front of her companions. Julius observes her response, and inquires if she has wished to discuss an alternative topic. Scarlett responds that there is nothing specific she desires to converse about. Anton asks him if he has anything further to mention. Julius points out that her hair has not yet reverted to its usual state, and she confirms this, stating her intention to visit a hot spring shortly for mental and physical recuperation. Julius assures her that this is a sound plan, as she represents an invaluable asset to their kingdom, and she ought to undertake whatever is necessary to maintain her optimal state. He expresses his reluctance to lose her over a trivial issue, and Scarlet responded that her sentiments towards him are mutual. Julius is visibly surprised by her statement, and Scarlet instructs him never to engage in such a rash act. As sacrificing his own life for her sake, she states her contentment that the royal family holds her blessing in such high regard. However, should a misfortune befall the future king on her account, she would find herself utterly unable to forgive herself. Julius abruptly interrupts her, inquiring if he may gather the roses present, and she grants him leave. Julius begins to gather the roses and will canvas her challenge to start and fashion, then he visited and Mercatoge. He recounts that in the past, his parents also adopted these guises as ordinary folks to enjoy the marketplace. Scarlet expresses her astonishment, noting their seemingly grave demeanor, but Julius clarifies that their seriousness is merely an external facade. They are outwardly strict, but in their private moments, they are quite romantic. He then shares with her that his father, the king, presented his mother with countless presents to capture her affection, yet she merely grew weary of them. Nevertheless, a single gift profoundly moved her, prompting her to accept his marriage proposal. This special gift was a crown fashioned from rose blossoms, which he crafted personally. Julius now emulates this gesture, gently placing a similar rose crown upon Scarlet Evie, confessing his need for her. He explains that her presence transforms his world into a vibrant tapestry of wonderful experiences, but conversely, without her, it remains dumb and uninspired. He then tenderly cradles her face, declaring she has captivated his heart. Scarlet as heart flutters, and her legs feel unsteady as Julius draws near, imploring her to remain by his side eternally. Scarlet is on the verge of accepting, but then Julius refers to her as his most cherished plaything, causing her demeanor to soar considerably. She questions if genuine affection went into crafting the rose crown, to which he confirmed, stating it was his love for his most amusing plaything that he infused into it. Scarlet is now enraged, yet Julius nonchalantly departed, remarking that they hadn't perceived that she, like other girls her age, harbored such a fascination for romantic notions. He then added that he had nearly forgotten her humanity. After witnessing her effortlessly subdue nobles, he admitted he could have possibly inferred that she desired a romantic declaration. Scarlet offers no verbal response. Instead, she dons her muted glove and pointedly inquires if Julius grants her leave to strike him. And with that, this video concludes. Please remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.